2 weeks after I signed a $30 million contract with my future brother-in-law, my family sat me at a folding table beside the kitchen. My name is Vivian Park. I am 35, founder of Stratus Innovations in Seattle. I built my company from nothing. No family capital, no favors, just long nights, burned coffee, and a stubborn refusal to quit. I thought my sister's wedding might finally change how they saw me. I was wrong. The Whitmore estate looked like something lifted from a luxury magazine. Manicured lawns stretched toward marble fountains. Soft string lights glowed as if the sun itself had been curated. Guests floated past in linen suits and silk dresses, champagne flutes catching the light. From the outside it was perfection. Inside my chest something felt tight. I arrived with Caleb Reyes, my +1, his hand warm and steady at the small of my back. He leaned in and murmured that the place felt unreal. I smiled because smiling had always been my role. The agreeable daughter, the low-maintenance sister, the one who never needed too much. My parents spotted us near the bar. My mother's eyes flicked over my emerald dress like she was assessing furniture. My father nodded, already half-turned toward a conversation with Graham Whitmore. When Graham shook my hand, he looked me in the eye. "So you are the mind behind Stratus Innovations," he said. "Impressive work." Before I could answer, my mother laughed lightly. "Vivian has always liked computers," she said, like she was talking about a childhood phase. I saw Graham pause. A question formed. Then my sister Samantha appeared, radiant, practiced, perfect. She hugged me with one arm. "Busy with her tech stuff," Samantha said. "You know how she is." I knew then. This was not the day I would finally matter. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and applause. When the reception doors opened, the room glittered. Chandeliers, gold-rimmed plates, tables arranged like a hierarchy you could see from across the hall. The wedding planner checked her tablet. Her finger hovered, then stopped. "Vivian Park, +1, she said. "Table O." We walked, past the center tables, past the laughter, past the soft jazz, through a narrow corridor where the air smelled like fryer oil and steam. Table O was a folding table, 2 metal chairs, plastic tubs stacked with dirty glasses nearby. The hum of dishwashers filled the silence. I stood there, perfectly still. Behind us, heels clicked. Blair Whitmore smiled with the ease of someone who had never been placed last. "We had to prioritize," she said. "You understand?" I looked past her. Samantha stood at the edge of the ballroom watching. She did not move. She did not speak. That was when something inside me fractured. Not loudly. Cleanly. I excused myself and locked myself into a small bathroom off the hall. I did not scream. I did not sob. I stared at my reflection and felt 35 years of shrinking burn away. Enough. I pulled out my phone and called Noah Kim. "Cancel the Whitmore contract," I said. "Effective immediately." There was silence. Then, "Are you sure?" "I am." I ended the call, straightened my dress, and walked back toward the reception. Some people cry in bathrooms. I end partnerships. I did not always know I was invisible. At first, it just felt like being quieter than everyone else. Growing up, Samantha filled every room she entered. She laughed louder, cried harder, needed more. My parents orbited around her moods like satellites. If she had a bad day, dinner changed. If she won something, the whole house celebrated. When I succeeded, it was noted. Briefly, then forgotten. I learned early that being low maintenance was rewarded. I learned to make my own meals when Samantha had practice. I learned to do homework without reminders because no one was checking anyway. When I brought home straight A's, my mother smiled and said, "That is nice, Vivian," before asking Samantha if she wanted dessert. The pattern never changed. It only grew more polished. On my 15th birthday, my parents forgot the cake. Samantha had a last-minute tennis lesson. They promised we would celebrate later. Later never came. I ate instant noodles that night and told myself it did not matter. At Berkeley, I walked across the graduation stage and scanned the crowd. My parents arrived as people were standing up to leave. My mother waved like she had been there the whole time. I smiled because smiling was easier than explaining. When I told them I was starting a tech company, my father asked how risky it was. My mother asked if I had a backup plan. When Samantha joined a consulting firm connected to a family friend, they told everyone at dinner parties. So I stopped sharing. I stopped expecting. I built Stratus Innovations quietly. I worked until my hands shook. I pitched to rooms where no one remembered my name. I slept on office couches. When the first funding round closed, I celebrated with a gas station sandwich alone in my car. It felt safer that way. Success could not be minimized if no one was invited to witness it. Years later, when Stratus finally took off, my parents began telling people I was doing well. They never asked what the company did. They never visited the office. They never met my team. Then Samantha got engaged. The invitation arrived like an afterthought. Heavy paper, elegant font, no note, no warmth. I read it standing in my kitchen, holding an unpaid parking ticket in one hand and a grocery list in the other. I almost declined. When my mother called to make sure I was coming, she said, "Just behave, Vivian," like my presence was a liability that needed managing. That word stayed with me. Behave. At the engagement party, I met Graham Whitmore for the first time. He asked sharp questions. He listened. He treated me like someone whose time mattered. When the contract closed 2 weeks later, $30 million tied to Stratus Innovations, my team cheered. We opened cheap champagne. I thought maybe this wedding would be different. Standing near the kitchen at table O, I realized how naive that hope had been. The folding table was not an oversight. It was a message. You do not belong at the center. You never did. As I sat there, I remembered every time I had shrunk to keep the peace, every apology I made for existing too loudly, every achievement I downplayed so Samantha could shine. Caleb sat across from me, jaw tight, hands clenched. He kept glancing toward the ballroom like he might march back in and flip tables. I touched his wrist and shook my head. Not yet. This was not about anger anymore. It was about clarity. I stood and walked to the bathroom because I needed to breathe without witnesses. The room was small, clean, unremarkable. I locked the door and stared at my reflection. I looked calm, almost cold. I thought about the contract, about leverage, about the quiet power of simply choosing not to participate anymore. When I called Noah, my voice did not shake. That surprised me. I expected fear. I expected grief. Instead, I felt relief. Back in the hall, as I walked toward the reception, I saw my parents laughing with guests. I saw Samantha glowing under attention that felt borrowed. I saw Blair Whitmore sipping champagne like nothing could touch her. None of them saw me yet. That was fine, because this time I was not asking to be seen. I was about to make myself impossible to ignore. I stepped into the ballroom, phone in hand, heart steady. By the time I reached the head table, the music was still playing, but it was about to stop. The ballroom hummed with soft jazz and the clink of crystal. People laughed in clusters, leaning close, trading compliments and business cards. No one noticed me at first. That suited me. I walked past tables dressed in linen and gold, past faces I vaguely recognized from holidays and half-forgotten family gatherings. I felt oddly light, like I had already stepped out of the role they assigned me years ago. Graham Whitmore sat at the head table, relaxed, one arm draped along the back of his chair. Blair Whitmore shimmered beside him, perfectly composed. Samantha sat just close enough to be seen as important, not close enough to be responsible for anything. When Graham saw me approaching, his brow furrowed. He straightened, confusion flickering across his face. Blair followed his gaze. Her smile faltered, just slightly. I stopped 2 steps from the head table. I did not raise my voice. I did not rush. I took out my phone and dialed. "Noah," I said, clear and steady, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "This is Vivian. Terminate the Whitmore contract. Effective immediately." The room shifted. It was subtle at first. A pause in conversation, a fork frozen midair. Then a ripple of whispers moved outward, like a dropped stone in water. Graham stood halfway from his chair. "Vivian," he said, low and controlled. "This is not the place." I met his eyes. "This is exactly the place." Samantha pushed back her chair, panic flashing across her face. "Vivian, please," she said. "We can talk later." I looked at her then, really looked, at the sister who had always stood just far enough away to avoid choosing sides. "You had years to talk," I said. "You chose silence." Blair laughed sharply, the sound brittle. "This is highly inappropriate," she said. "You are making a scene." I glanced around. People were watching now. Investors, partners, family friends who had never learned my name. "I did not make a scene," I said. "You did. When you decided where I belonged." Graham exhaled slowly. "The contract benefits both of us," he said. "You are being emotional." That word landed like a match on dry ground. "Emotional would have been crying at the folding table," I replied. "This is business." From the corner of my eye, I saw 2 men stand. Michael Lee from Harbor Capital, Gerald Evans from Alpine Ventures. They exchanged a glance before approaching, curiosity sharpening their expressions. "Miss Park." Michael said carefully. Is this partnership fully dissolved? Yes, I said. As of this moment. Gerald nodded slowly, eyes flicking to Graham. Interesting timing. Blair opened her mouth, but no words came out. Samantha looked like she might be sick. I slipped my phone back into my purse. I wish you a beautiful wedding, I said evenly. I will not be staying for dessert. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me the music faltered. Someone scrambled to adjust the playlist. The illusion cracked. Outside, the night air felt cool against my skin. Caleb was already there, waiting near the valet stand, eyes bright with something like pride. That, he said quietly, was legendary. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. I did not plan a speech, I said. I just stopped protecting their comfort. He smiled. That tends to change things. By the time we drove away, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Calls, messages, names I had not seen in years lighting up my screen. I did not answer any of them. Monday morning arrived like any other. Gray Seattle light filtered through my office windows. I sipped my Americano while Noah stood in my doorway, phone pressed to his ear, eyes wide. They are calling everyone, he said when he hung up. Legal. PR. Even suppliers. Good, I said. Send the termination letter. He hesitated. There will be fallout. I know, I said. There already was. An hour later, my inbox filled with new messages. Not panic, interest. Michael Lee wanted a meeting. Gerald Evans suggested lunch. Momentum shifted, quietly but decisively. Then a text from Samantha appeared. You ruined everything. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I set the phone face down. Caleb leaned against my desk, coffee in hand. Or, he said gently, you saved yourself. For the first time in days, I smiled. I knew the next conversation with my family would not be easy. I knew there would be accusations, guilt, attempts to rewrite the story. But I also knew this. The seat they denied me no longer mattered. I had already built something far more important. The days after the wedding were quieter than I expected. No shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations, just distance and clarity. My parents called first, then stopped when I did not return the calls. Messages followed, carefully worded, as if they were negotiating with a stranger instead of their daughter. They wanted explanations, apologies, a way to smooth things over. I did not offer any of that. Samantha texted again 3 days later. She asked to meet, just the two of us. I agreed, not because I owed her anything, but because I was curious who she would be without an audience. We met at a small cafe on Capitol Hill. She arrived early, eyes tired, hands wrapped around a cooling cup of tea. When she saw me, she flinched, like she expected anger. I did not give her that. I was jealous, she said finally. I always have been. I waited. You built something real, she continued. I married into something borrowed. It was easier to make you smaller than admit I felt behind. Her honesty surprised me, not because it was deep, but because it was late. I'm not carrying that anymore, I said. Your insecurity, their expectations. None of it. She nodded, swallowing hard. Is there a way back? I considered the question carefully. There is a way forward, I said. But it is not the same thing. We left it there. Back at work, Stratus Innovations surged. New partnerships formed. Old ones faded. The company grew stronger without the weight of compromise. I slept better. I laughed more. I stopped checking my phone during family gatherings because I stopped attending them altogether. One evening, Caleb and I sat on my balcony overlooking Lake Union, the city lights blinking like quiet affirmations. He asked if I felt guilty. I felt guilty for years, I said, for wanting more, for taking up space, for not being grateful enough for crumbs. And now? Now I feel free. Freedom did not come from the contract termination or the public moment at the wedding. Those were symptoms. The real shift happened in that small bathroom behind the kitchen when I finally chose myself without negotiation. I realized something important then. Family is not defined by proximity or shared last names. It is defined by respect, by protection, by the willingness to pull out a chair instead of pushing someone into the shadows. They never gave me a seat at their table, so I built my own. It is larger. It is sturdier. And everyone who sits there knows exactly why they belong. If you have ever been overlooked in rooms you helped build, if you have ever been told to behave instead of be yourself, hear this clearly. Protecting your peace is not selfish. Claiming your worth is not cruel. Walking away from disrespect is not failure. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up quietly and leave. And sometimes that is how you finally arrive,